Indram Mitram Varunamagni Matarato Jivyaha Sasuparna Gurutman Ekam Sat Vipar Bahudavadanchagmin Yaman Matarish Vanamahu Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. To that presence, which is all pervasive and ever one, the illumined seers apply many divine names, such as the eternal companion, the Father of the gods, the divine atmosphere, the waters of life, the fire of yoga, the winged carrier of consciousness, the devourer of death, and the one who shines forth the light. And there shines Brahman. May that Brahman protect us, sustain us, and illumine our thinking consciousness. Free us from faults and fault-finding, and reveal to us the essence of the scriptures. Om, peace, peace, peace. May peace be unto us, and may peace be unto all. Om, Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. As usual, and following up on last Saturday, just after we returned from Rishikesh and our retreat at Mother India's Himalayas, very good to see all of you coming forth and appearing at Satsang on this Saturday. They continue with the flow of holy days. Yesterday was Chaitanya's birthday. So Chaitanya Ho, as we say in our order, Ramakrishna order, may your consciousness be awakened, and maybe even beyond just awakened, become fully awakened and enter into and enjoy the peace that passes all understanding and the bliss that transcends happiness. Tuesday is Swami Yogananda's birthday, so that's another holy day which we have coming up that we can observe with a special attention. These great beings that are surrounding us through the ages that unfortunately not many people in the Burloka, that means the earth realm, take account of. But the devotees are all enthralled all the time about the spiritual light that flows off of them and permeates everything, makes life richer and better. That continues on in that vein to one of the great avatars, Sri Ram, whose birthday is in early April. And we will find out what the avatar says about Advaita and in those scriptures, particularly the Adhyatma Ramayana. I found a whole page in the Gospel of Sri Ramakrishna recently on Sri Ramakrishna talking about the Adhyatma Ramayana. And as I was searching for the God blogs, which we've continued on with this week, and I'm getting good responses from all of you and reading those Brahman bites, those truth tidbits that we all use to keep our mind thinking upon Brahman, on divine reality, hopefully all the time, but at least once a day. It's not possible to keep your mind on Brahman all the time. Otherwise, how can this work go on? That's a quote from Holy Mother. So she says then, spend time each day chanting the holy names, doing the japa, meditating, seeking holy company, and serving God in living beings. As she summates it so nicely in what we call a well-balanced spiritual life, which includes, of course, plenty of austerity, which we just got through with in India over the last few weeks at the Sharda Tapovan. Tapovan actually means austerity. place of austerity. So we engaged in some there, including some very cold weather, particularly in the morning, and some rarity of atmosphere and oxygen at the heights. You saw some of the pictures if you got on early today that were taken of the group in Rishikesh. So we're back with the results of that austerity beginning to fructify. The one thing the devotee or the aspirant forgets sometimes is that when you do these austerities inside of the coverall of the 4 yogas, you might say, that it does take time for them to come forth. It's not something that comes forth quickly like the rewards you get here in the world. Some of them, of course, take some time too, but usually you can get results from your work in the world fairly quickly if you put your mind to it. But the time clock that spiritual life runs on is a bit different, and one has to have the faith that the results of one's practices and austerities will come to one over time. Of course, one has to remain aware after one does the austerities. It's not something that you turn on and then just turn off, and then the results of what you did earlier go right over your head, as they say. So you have to commit to this spiritual life 24/7. And it's a good use for that term in our tradition. And so these results of your practices will show up in your life, and you'll be able to be consciously aware of their appearance and make the most of them. Enjoy them to the fullest with the exquisite enjoyment mentioned by Swami Vivekananda. Many people seek enjoyment. Very few know about exquisite enjoyment. So that comes from a person whose senses are pure, have been purified by their practices, and whose mind has become elevated by study, and whose heart has become opened by adoring the Lord and chanting his names. In the great tradition that we have in Chaitanya, whose birthday was yesterday, chant the names of the Lord and his glories unceasingly until the mirror of the mind becomes wiped clean, and quench that mighty forest fire raging furiously within. That forest fire is worldliness. So Chaitanya's famous song comes to mind out of thinking about him. Let's open the floor for satsang. I hope some of you have come armed to the teeth with some questions or some things to share in satsang. Who's going to start us rolling? I think Chinmana is, if my intuition is right.
Namaste, that's right. Good to see you all. I've been taking a look at the Nasadiya Sukta hymn this afternoon. It's obviously a very beautiful hymn. It's from the 10th mandala of the Rig Veda. I would like to read briefly Swami Vivekananda's translation of the 3 first stanzas for you. Existence was not then, nor non-existence. The world was not, the sky beyond was neither. What covered the mist? Of whom was that? What was in the depths of the darkness thick? Death was not then, nor immortality. The night was neither separate from day, but motionless did that vibrate alone, in its own glory its own glory one. Beyond that nothing did exist. At first in darkness hidden darkness lay, undistinguished as one mass of water. Then that which lay in void thus covered, a glory did put forth by tapa.
Well, you started us off on a very high note. Wake Up the Note, the song that had its birth far off. That level of thing where you're starting us off on, which is at the beginning of the projection or the creation, depending on which term you want to use. Both projection and creation belong to Maya, as we just found out. And beyond both is what we call Brahman or Atman. So keep our minds on that. As we do, though, great seers open up to what's beyond consciousness and unconsciousness, what's beyond fullness and emptiness. which it was just stated there by you as another one of those pairs of opposites. The higher pairs of opposites are form and formlessness, and death and eternal life, and awareness and non-awareness, consciousness and unconsciousness. When those get meditated upon deeply by the yogi who knows how to put dharana, concentration, dhyan, meditation, and samadhi together into one force called samyama, then these inner visions open up from the standpoint of the great witness. There has to be someone who witnessed all of that you just read. That's what you have to keep in mind as you read it, rather than fall into some sort of state of awestruck level of awareness where you don't draw any apt conclusions. The best conclusion is that we have seen it. We've seen it from the highest standpoint of our own awareness when it's fully turned on, as we're fully awakened, when that third eye is fully open, if you want to put it in terms of Sri Krishna's teachings. The jnana chakshu, the wisdom eye, is fully open. And it immediately took me right back to the retreat in Rishikesh again, where we were studying. We spent a week with the word. So I had 7 charts, new charts on Om. And that's that primal vibration out of which everything pours forth, as you were just reading about so nicely. So if you know that everything is as reported by the Rig Veda, as reported by the Bible, as reported by the Upanishads, actually the very shortest of all Upanishads goes into that same description of what existed before existence, before awareness was there. And the sukta that you just read from, if you go into all of these, you find that there's this awareness of formlessness and of emptiness. Formlessness is what we would use in India, and emptiness is what they would use in Buddhism, Shunyata. So particularly those two traditions have been focused in on the origins of all things. And when they find the origin of all thing was in the word, in the beginning was the word kind of awareness, then of course the immediate question comes up: who is it that's witnessing this formlessness? There's got to be a central condensed consciousness where there's this inner eye that opens up and looks out upon all of this from the inmost state, from its inmost consciousness. And that, of course, is the makings for what they've been calling samadhi and satori, self-realization, and all of the higher realizations of spiritual life that go beyond the two-ness of things, even beyond the two-ness of Shiva and Shakti or Brahman and Shakti, to this beginningless consciousness with a capital C that infills everything like sweetness in sugarcane juice, Sri Ramakrishna used to say, or like a rasagola sitting in syrup. We came across a few of those in India recently, and only a few of the most intrepid would put one of those in their mouth. You bite down on that, and just it's like a horse eating an apple. Everything just comes pouring forth in the case of sweet syrup. So maybe that's what it would be like to ingest a beautiful pill of prakriti that's in its unmanifested state still, and see what's contained inside of the power of the Mahashakti. Because when she gives the bijam Om to the creator, Lord Brahma, then that's when everything pours forth, and the initial vibration then is struck. The bell is sounded, and or the meteor has dropped into the huge body of water, like the ocean, and waves will start coming forth and much activity. We had a whole chart on that saying of Sri Ramakrishna. It's almost like the falling of a great weight into a huge body of water. And a beautiful chart that hopefully some of you who weren't there will see in the future. So these are some of the ramifications and some of the ruminations that come forth when I hear high-minded truth spoken like that. Could hardly even call it philosophy. It's really a vision that the unified seer, or the seer with unified consciousness, he's brought everything together. The magnet has pulled back all its filings, and the mind has pulled back all its lifetimes and all its bits of consciousness that were emanating out and turning into, as that reading you just gave said, turning into bits of matter. And then it all gets retracted at a certain time by the force of that great soul who did the projection. And that's one of the arts that we have to learn as spiritual aspirants. If we're going to live a divine life next time around, if we're going to have the choice of not being born again and get off the wheel of transmigration, and also if we have a great mission to come back to help other souls, then that's one of the things that's going to have to be learned, how to draw back everything back into one's consciousness from which it sprang. I heard that some of you, I don't see any of them present today, maybe one, some of you are taking up my book, Dissolution of the Mind Stream, and studying it as a group. So I like to see things like that happen, hear about them. And feel free to contact me. Author is still alive, by the way. And feel free to contact me if you have any questions about it or any deep thoughts to share. But Dissolution of the Mind Stream, I put that out quite a while ago because it's not just a statement of highfalutin philosophy, but it's an actual art form, spiritually speaking, that you're going to want to entertain as an attainment, and bring that power back to the soul, because random life, random consciousness, and the throwing forth of various ideas and desire-based ideas from the mind, we know that's called vikalpa. And we know that sankalpa also is one of those words that stands in the way of becoming a fully adept and attuned yogi, as Krishna tells Arjuna in the Gita, be thou a yogi, once higher than men of knowledge, higher than the wealthy people, higher than the priest class, is this yogi, he tells Arjuna. So that's a person who is, and of course, yogini, if you want to put it in the feminine form, that's a person who has learned that to withdraw that power back in. And unbeknownst to most people, when they are told to withdraw the senses from the objects, it's usually not in India a case of morality or immorality, or something that I'm having to practice detachment in order to gain my power back. It's really more of a statement that the power is always within you and that you've just lost control of it, like drop the reins of the 5 horses. So the gaining back the reins of the 5 horses to gain control of the chariot of the mind, of course, is an ancient metaphor. But the reason to do that would come forth in terms of being fully masterful and containing the powers that are within you and putting them into a focus. And that focus, you might say, eventually is the third eye, is the power to awaken the Jnana Chakshu. If thine eye be single, you shall know the truth kind of level of consciousness. So it's been known over endless periods of time, as you just read. There's this constant, immense passage of phases of time called yugas or mahayugas. And again, we go to India to learn about that because we find out that time is rather illusory, and it's also all expansive. It goes on and on forever. that witness that was there to see the end of a cycle of time, all of a sudden was keyed into a great secret that time goes on in cycles all the time, and that you can get off that cycle. Those are the two things to draw forth from the statement, time is an illusion, because it seems to end. And that's where I think the church fathers made a mistake in Christianity when they heard Christ say, in the beginning was the Word was with God. They thought the beginning was real, but they didn't know that the Om sounds all the time, for one. The word sounds all the time, and that it has manifested and unmanifested phases. And when the manifested phase comes along, consciousness gets drawn to that, to name, form, time, space, and cause and effect, right? The five key points of Maya, which is the curtain of nescience coming down over the third eye. And then when it becomes unmanifested, it draws itself back into a long period called pralaya, because we don't have a word for that in English or in Latin. So you have something called pralaya, where everything turns to its seed form. But consciousness, remember, does not come and go. Well, where's the time when it will come, when all of time is in the soul? Where's the place it will go to when all of space is in the soul? The soul itself has always been sitting there watching the passing of time as if they were seconds or minutes, because consciousness is timeless. So it's from that standpoint that a great testament like that was written down by someone and is now read by Chinmana today for us here at Satsang. Who else has something to contribute today?
I have a quick clarification, and that was wonderful. When Sri Ramakrishna says that coming down from samadhi, he had to come down a long way before he saw Om. If we put that statement in the context of the 4 stages of the word, para, pashanti, madhyama, vaikari, what I'm assuming is that he was in the unmanifested state of Om that you were talking about, where it is identical with Brahman. And then it was pashanti that he was talking about when he saw, quote unquote, saw Om. Does that make sense?
Right. It's back to the sloka that I just recited from the Rig Veda, that he's the father of the gods, the eternal friends of all being. He's the all-pervasive ether. So the all-pervasive ether, we know that in terms of 5 ethers, instead of just physical space, which we look at nowadays. But there are 5 ethers, one inside the other, like Russian dolls again. And each one of those ethers holds many different kinds of beings and their different bodies, gross, subtle, and causal. So that's if you're talking about the causal, that's a long way to come down from Brahman. That, you might say it's like you're looking at from a high peak toward a destination over the horizon that you want to go to. So all this expanse, you have to go down the mountain, across the prairie, over the desert, cross some more mountains, go through the forest. You can see it all spread out before you, and you can see where about the destination that you're headed for. So that's a long way to come, physically speaking. In the same way, when you're at that level of witness consciousness, or even beyond it, there's a large expanse of Mahakasha, which is formless, and you have to, as it were, row the boat of your causal body through that ocean of subtle waters. That's called Akarnava, right? The ocean of subtle existence. That's all formless, and in that ocean of subtle waters is sleeping Vishnu, and in Vishnu is sleeping Lord Brahma in his navel. And when Vishnu surfaces on the bed of 1,000 snakes, Ananta, and then he's asleep, then out of his navel grows that lotus, and the lotus opens, and there's Lord Brahma with all the bijams. This is, the description, at least anthropomorphically, which we get through the ancient scriptures of India of how everything is going to transpire before even the word Om is given to Lord Brahma by Divine Mother, and he plants it into unmanifested Prakriti and starts to vibrate. Remember the chart we had on that at the Rishikesh retreat, how Lord Brahma was projecting his concentrated mind with Om into unmanifested Prakriti, penetrating it so that it would start to vibrate and produce things. Well, that was back to what Chinmana was just reading in some of those verses. So anyway, that's a long way to come down from Brahman to get to Om. That's why in the beginning was the word. The word was with with God, and the word was God. When the word was God, then that's infinite space of Brahman. Everything's been drawn back into the infinite consciousness of Brahman. You could walk 1,000 yojanas, if you want to put it in terms of the old Sanskrit, and never find a form, right? Never find even an inkling of a form. And that's what you were just calling the first phase of the word, para. Even the first phase of the word is formless, right? So that's a long distance, spiritually speaking. Until you get to Prashanti, that's when the word, that's when Brahma was about to interject his consciousness, injected into unmanifested Prakriti, right about the Prashanti, because then it makes possible the space and time upon which name and form will come forth and accrue, and then start the whole cause and effect cycles, many of them going, you see. So that's how to probably flesh out or take apart Sri Ramakrishna's statement. I had to come down a long way from Brahman to get to Om. We're very fortunate to even know about such transcendent principles, that somebody did take the time to write it, because I, like Gaudapada says, I salute that being on bended knee, because if you have a vision like that and you're holding a pen, to write down something that you see, it's going to drop from your hand. You're going to go into it like a moth into a bonfire. It's too blissful to resist. There's a story about Sri Ramakrishna sitting there, and Hriday walks up and said, Hriday is sitting there in front of everyone, showing off to everyone. He's like with his eyes closed, pretending to be really enlightened, in front of Sri Ramakrishna's room, doing the japa beads. And Sri Ramakrishna walks up and says, "Hey, what's that?" Sat down and says, "Give me those." So Sri Ramakrishna took the beads and started telling him, and within 2 or 3 beads and saying his mantra to Mother Kali, the beads just fell and he was in samadhi. And M was there, and recorded that down in the gospel. Thanks be to him from us. So that's what it's like. The minute you put your mind on that, if you've seen it or if you've even had an inkling of it, then you are that. And that thou art is one of the greatest of all Mahavakyas. Tat Tvamasi, you've heard it. That's what that means, is that you see yourself. We call it yourself with a capital S. Even that seems to belittle it. But when you see that with a capital T, Tat, the immediate result of I am that, that's where Tat Tvamasi, that art, turns into I am that. See, so all of this has been commented on in volumes too by the yogis and the rishis. So, but we hear them and we think, well, I should repeat that and think about it, and maybe I'll get somewhere. But basically, it's immediate. You say, when you have an experience of that, you are that. It's not like a lower samadhi, like you're coming back from dissolving the mind stream. So you're giving up air, earth, fire, water, and ether. You're giving up tasting, touching, hearing, smelling, and seeing. You're giving up the fourfold mind, including its thoughts, chitta, and yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha. All the vrittis are dissolving, and you're going inward, backwards, involving back into the source. It's not like that. It's like it's an immediate realization that thou art. You would have probably had to have done a couple lifetimes of successful involution like a bodhisattva does, or like a Jivanmukta has done, in order to have that immediate reaction to seeing the light of Brahman. In the meantime, just prepare yourself for it. You'll be stunned by it, especially the first experience in any given lifetime. You'll be stunned by it. That's called Jhara Samadhi. Sri Ramakrishna said that he sat for a long time. He sat so long under a tree when he had that state that the grass underneath him burned from the heat of his body. He got up, and later when he could move, he could see that where he had sat, there was impressed there where he was sitting was the grass had become so hot from the heat of his body and from the intensity of having the experience of that it was all burned there. So it's a very intense, to say the least. Ordinary people, if they do have it, ordinary devotees, won't come back for it, won't come back from it. Mother cut the string to their kites, the song says. The kites go into the infinite.
I was looking through my notes from the retreat at Sharda Tapavan, and there's a statement that you make, and you've made it before, but I think it's something that it's hard for us to wrap our minds around just because of the language of it, even in English. And you're talking about how, we have to purify the senses with knowledge. So I was wondering if you would explain that process, what that really means, what that purification through knowledge means, and how that relates to the senses.
Well, it immediately occurs to me that people are going around getting uploads, from the senses. I mean, the senses are called the Jnana Indriyas. Jnana Indriyas. Indriyas, the five senses, Jnana, wisdom, or knowledge. So the senses are already equipped to gather knowledge from nature. And we see that happening all over. Everyone's getting knowledge and using it then to make money and have a profession and live a life, have a family, all of that. But the nice classification in India is that that's all a paravidya. So you're getting an upload of paravidya. What you really need is a download of paravidya. Instead of an upload of aparavidya all the time, you need a download of paravidya, supreme knowledge. So that's what will turn the senses divine, purify them first, because we haven't seen in most cases lower knowledge purifying people. What's the quote you put on your website all the time is like that, Vivekananda, that quote from Vivekananda, when he says, lower knowledge will satisfy for a little while, but higher knowledge will satisfy for all time. So it's only those people who have the peace that passes understanding and who have experienced bliss and who are content and who are advanced in their spiritual attainments, who have subjecting themselves to a download, a transmission of higher knowledge. And I was just yesterday thinking that if one had a prayer, if somebody who had become aware of everything that was here and was satisfied that it was all fine and it was all within the self, then the prayer would probably be just to become completely still and silent. So I was thinking about myself at my stage of life, as old as I am and everything. I just want to settle down and become completely silent and peaceful at the mother's feet. Never to vibrate again, never to desire to have anything to know or not, or be afraid of not knowing. That's where you get beyond knowledge, even higher knowledge. You get to what's called truth or divine love, union with the divine. And because everything else always leaves something out of the picture a little bit. So that complete satisfaction that you get, that transcendent contentment that passes all understanding is well named in that case. And that's really what you get when you find the realm of higher knowledge. As I was saying, you see people with lower knowledge, actually, it's not that they don't get that peace and stillness and fulfillment, but actually what they get is a desire for more lifetimes. They get an attachment to nature. I mean, basically in the West, we've got three things we're dealing with. We've got Western upbringing, we've got Western thinking, and we've got Western conventions, basically, that we're still laboring under. And all three of those are going to have to be replaced by what? By the Vedanta that Vivekananda brought us in 1893. That's what. And that's why it's a universal religion and universal language coming from an avatar again. It only comes from great souls like that. So we're in the process of replacing our old ways of thinking and how we were brought up and our Western education, upbringing, education, and thinking. Those have to be purified. And the purification that we're looking for comes from higher knowledge that only the Vedanta contains. You're not going to find it in conventional religion. You can look from the top of the Himalayas to the Caucasus. You can look from the Gobi Desert to the depths of the ocean. You'll never find that until you find a guru with higher wisdom, quote unquote, Vivekananda. So that's how important that is, because that higher knowledge will bring you up short. And you'll never act again. You'll certainly never act unthinkingly or with desire or with ignorance. If you act at all, it's going to be for the highest benefit of all. But that is in itself a kind of inaction. Krishna describes that in the Gita. Those who know that inaction is in action and action is in inaction, they know the truth. So their acts are non-acts. That's everything they're doing is from the realization of ajati, not jati. Jati means birth, lineages, families, all of that. And the Western thinking is that, if you go back in time, you're a paramecium. But in India, if you go back in time, you're God. So which do you choose? What makes more sense to you? Are you consciousness, or are you just are you the a-create, or are you the create? The create should be something that you have mastered. And then once you mastered it, you can withdraw from it and say, what a beautiful play was there. And I can go back and sport in it again, like Sri Ramakrishna, if I like, without getting caught in it. But on this plane of existence called the Burloka, it's very rare that people are not getting caught in it. It's more likely that they are. And the rarity really goes to those souls who have freed themselves from it. And we admire them most of all. They can even come back and help others get free, as Holy Mother said. So those are all part and parcel elements of the higher knowledge, para-vidya. The apara-vidya, you should be able to take and leave it. That's why she said, don't just seek God, see God. So when you sit to meditate, you should, before you even sit down, she said, God is about to sit down on his sacred seat or her sacred seat and commune with God. You don't sit down thinking, I have something to attain, or I'm imperfect. So God is now going to commune with God. That thou art. And even if it isn't true yet, and you haven't rendered it true with your own purity and your own realization, still assume the position, right? Police pull you out of the car. put you up against it, assume the position. So you spread your legs, you put your hands on. They're after some gun or something, and they think you have. So in spiritual life, you have to assume the position too. That this you can do it because the truth has been told already that the Atman is perfect and thou art that. So what's keeping me from realizing that? It's just my own thoughts in the passage of time. My Western upbringing, my Western education, my Western thinking has been driven so deeply into me by so many people who believe it, that the world is real. But now I have great messenger come to me and say, like yesterday's God blog, did you see? Beautiful poem at the end. A man has come to me from a land that never sleeps. Now he has told me that mother's son of wisdom never rises and sets. You see, I'm living in the daylight, the eternal daylight of the soul, of the truth.
I've got a question.
Yes.
I've been thinking about and trying to reconcile like free will and determinism, and from the point of view of like Advaita and Vishtadvaita and Vaita. And I find myself taking those three different perspectives at any given time. Is that kind of analogous, like, to our relationship with the gunas? They just keep arising at an appropriate or inappropriate time, and you just deal at the level that your consciousness is. What is the kind of the proper standpoint in navigating between these perspectives?
The gunas will definitely have a role to play in those. Of course, if you've mastered the gunas, we often like to say that it's not like Christ didn't have a dark night of the soul, or Sri Ramakrishna didn't get upset because the carriage driver didn't come to pick him up, and so forth. That Thomas has just completely vanished. As long as the creation is under swing, in full swing, the three gunas have to be there. So then the person who becomes aware of tamas, rajas, and sattva, that is inertia or slothfulness in the mind, frenetic activity, and balance, where where peace is returned. The person who becomes aware of those three then wants to use them appropriately. And if you want to try and segue them or dovetail them with Dvaita, Vishishta Dvaita, and Advaita, then it definitely would make sense that you could be able to do that. I mean, if you were a high thinker that just loved to live at the Advaitic level and could do that, like a person who lives in the upper altitudes and doesn't have any problem breathing, very little oxygen, but other people can't go there. So if that person who lives and has mastered a high altitude comes down to help others scale the mountain, as it were, and breathe freely, then that person is going to have to take on some rajas and tamas in order to do it. But as he takes on rajas and tamas, he's the master of them. He's not falling under their influence. There was a beautiful story about Sri Krishna as a baby, Gopala, Devakinanda, the song. So he lifted Mount Govardhan, to shelter the village from flood. He used this whole mountain, lifted it up as an umbrella and put it over the village so the village would stay dry. And then he put it back down and went back to being a baby. So a few days later, his uncle says to him, "Would you bring me that stool over there so I can sit on it?" And Gopala says, "That's too heavy. I can't lift that." He just lifted the mountain. So basically that's in the role, right? I mean, you get into the role, but if you can do it consciously with mastery of the gunas, for instance, in this case, then the gunas are your bond slaves and you're not theirs. And you can pretend to be tamasic in order to help tamasic people. I mean, it's an old adage and an old idiom that the wise are aware of. That's why they don't judge people, particularly amongst their own, how great they are, how lowly they are, who's higher, who's lower. And that kind of gets put off the side because you never know who's play acting. Sri Ramakrishna tells that story of the track runners in a circle, right? So they take off from the start line, and you look, and one's going way out in front of the others. So he's like best runner. You look away to talk to your friend for a few seconds or a minute, and look back, and then he's at the end. See, he's gone all the way around so fast, he's caught up with the others. Now he looks like he's in last place. So it depends on when you look and how you understand the whole race, as to be able to determine the progress of people or not. So you always have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, yeah. For instance, like sometimes if I have a decision to make, I'll wait to see if the mother is going to open up the channel, and then sometimes it'll, like, some kind of miraculous turn of events happens, which is kind of like, oh, okay, well, now I know what to do. Other times it's like, all right, I got to take the sledgehammer and slam a hole in the wall. You know, it's not always easy to tell what's appropriate at what time. You know, it's yeah. So
I hear you, and I think basically that even applies more to what not to do. You know, I mean, you want to know what to do, what to do, but if you wait, and then you'll find yourself saying, "Boy, I'm sure glad I didn't do that." You know, I'm glad I waited because mother, it wasn't clear to me what not to do. So I think it even applies for most people on that level. Mostly, if people are looking with some sort of sattvic awareness in them and asking for the next step, she'll give it. But if they're looking without that kind of sattvic awareness, and they're using their ego to move forward instead of her will, then that's the classic mistake that always happens to them. You know, they don't wait; they just plunge in. And she was about to tell them, "No, don't do that. You know, here's what not to do right now. Like, you know, don't be egotistic, don't be forceful, settle down, draw back, watch, witness." It's usually always the best rule of thumb. What's the best thing about the decision-making process is not to make any decisions. Let her do it all.
that really takes being able to just abide, you know, in a vibrational state, and you know, kind of just wait without worry. You know, just as you know, just kind of be content with whatever happens. You know, just like no expectations. You know, no appointments, no disappointments. You know.
Yeah, that's right in the Gita too. The 32 points of immortal Dharma. Be content with anything, Arjuna. You know, and that's a hard one because so many very horrible things are happening in the world all around you, and you're supposed to be content with anything. You know, so somehow you know you're fortunate enough not to have been drawn into that war or that war zone or that period of starvation or that pestilence and disease. And you feel yourself very fortunate, but then on top of that, then you're going to have to be content with the fact that happens in Maya all the time. It never abates. Sometimes it's on the rise, sometimes it's not, but it's always there. So that was one of the great lessons of the Burloka, life on Earth, to build forbearance, basically, and character. And those two things are important. Don't forget your titiksha now. Build your forbearance up really well. And that's, you know, some of those 6 jewels you're talking about that are so important to Vedanta. But if you do forbear, the what you'll see in a person is the growth of character. You know, these great souls like Swami Yogananda, whose birthday is next week, you know, just full of character. It couldn't probably carry so much character that it chased everything else out of the mind and body. So it was just like a walking character study. And you can meditate on souls like that as ideals and imbibe from them that their high nature and get a transmission from them. Om Shanto Mahanto Nivashanti Shanto Vashantavat Lokahitam Charantaha Tirnaha Svayam Bhima Vavarnavam Janan Ahetunanyanapi Tarayantaha Om Shantihi Shantihi Shantihi. There are luminaries on this earth, silent and great, who, like the coming of the spring season, bring about the well-being of the world. They themselves have crossed over the ocean of transmigration and suffering, and free of selfish motive, help others to do the same. So may peace betide all, may higher wisdom dawn upon all, may all see the face of truth and be fortified by the armor of love and goodwill. Om, peace, peace, peace. Peace be unto us, peace be unto all. Hari Om, Hari Om, Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Shri Guru Om.